Tuesday, June 30th, center court adjacent. A 21-year-old from Quezon City steps out as the number 29 seed, the first Filipino in history seeded at a Grand Slam tournament. Across the net stands a woman who already knows what it takes to beat her. Stay with me, because this first-round matchup carries more weight, more history, and more unfinished business than the draw sheet lets on.
Let's start with who Eala actually is, because her rise didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen by luck. As a young girl, she left the Philippines for the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Spain, thousands of miles from her family, her friends, and everything familiar. Her parents made the decision early. If their daughter had a shot at tennis at the highest level, she needed to train where the highest level trained. That meant years of sacrifice. It meant a childhood split between two countries, long stretches away from home, and the kind of isolation that most young athletes never have to process before they're even teenagers. It meant believing in a dream that, at the time, had no roadmap because no Filipino player, man or woman, had ever broken into the main draw of a Grand Slam as a seeded competitor. There was no blueprint to follow. Eala and her family had to build one from nothing. One tournament, one ranking point, one disappointment at a time. That backstory matters because every win she's collected since has been layered on top of that foundation. And this year, the wins have been piling up. Heading into Wimbledon, Eala carries a 9-4 win-loss record across the grass court swing, a stretch that included a WTA 125 title in Birmingham and a semi-final appearance at the Berlin Open, where she pushed past Linda Noskova of the Czech Republic before bowing out. She arrives at the All England Club ranked world number 30, and for the first time in her career, she's been handed a seed, number 29. Here's what most casual fans don't realize, though. The road to that seed wasn't simple. Eala climbed steadily through the rankings over the past several months, but a string of withdrawals and shifting positions among the players above her also played a role in nudging her into seeded territory. Either way you look at it, the outcome is the same. A nation of more than 115 million people now has a tennis player they've never had before. One who walks into Wimbledon expected to win, not just compete. The pressure that comes with that shift shouldn't be underestimated. Being an underdog and being a seed carry two completely different psychological weights, even for a player as composed as Eala has shown herself to be.
Now let's talk about her opponent, because Renata Zarazúa is not a name casual viewers will recognize, and that's exactly the kind of mismatch in attention that makes this story worth telling. The 28-year-old from Mexico sits at world number 76, a number that on its own suggests Eala should be the heavy favorite, but rankings rarely tell the full story in tennis, and Zarazúa's resume on grass specifically deserves a second look. She's a four-time WTA 125 champion. She's making her third main draw appearance at Wimbledon. In 2024, she fell in the first round to Emma Raducanu. In 2025, she went one round further, reaching the second round before running into 13th seed Amanda Anisimova. She is, in other words, a player who has been quietly building grass court credibility while most of the tennis world wasn't paying attention. That kind of steady, unglamorous improvement is easy to overlook when you're only watching rankings, but it's exactly the type of trajectory that produces upsets at majors. And then there's the part of this story that turns a routine first-round draw into something with real emotional stakes. Zarazúa and Eala have already played each other once, back in August 2024 at the Cary Tennis Classic in the United States, an ITF event far from the bright lights of a Grand Slam. The two met in the quarterfinals. Eala took the first set 6-3, looking firmly in control. Then Zarazúa did what experienced players do. She adjusted, she dug in, she took the second set 6-4 and the third 6-3, completing a full reversal and knocking Eala out of the tournament. It remains, to this day, the only completed singles match between the two players, and the only one Zarazúa has won.
Here's the thing about that loss, though. It didn't define Eala. If anything, it became part of the engine behind everything that followed. Over the next 2 years, she returned to the Nadal Academy, refined her game, and climbed steadily up the rankings, eventually notching wins over far higher-ranked opponents, including world number 4 Elena Rybakina and world number 8 Anna Svitolina in Berlin. That's the kind of resume that doesn't happen by accident. It happens because a player took a painful defeat and turned it into a checklist of things to fix. But here's where the story gets more layered than a simple revenge narrative. Eala and Zarazua aren't just former opponents, they've also been doubles partners. At the 2025 French Open, the two teamed up and reached the second round together, beating a British-Spanish pairing in straight sets before falling to a Serbian-Russian duo. Before that, at the 2024 Canberra International, Eala actually got a measure of payback in doubles, teaming with Laura Pigossi to beat a pairing that included Zarazua in the round of 16. So this isn't a one-dimensional rivalry, it's a relationship that's flipped between partnership and competition multiple times over the past 2 years. They know each other's games from the inside. They've shared a bench, shared strategy, and shared the kind of trust that doubles partnerships require. Now they're on opposite sides of the net at a Grand Slam, with far more on the line than an ITF quarterfinal or a doubles round of 16. So what happens when two players who've been teammates become rivals on the biggest stage in tennis? That's the question hanging over this match, and it's worth pausing on the tactical picture before we get to what's at stake. That's the matchup beneath the matchup. Can Eala close out points quickly enough to deny Zarazua the extended rally she thrives in? Or does this turn into exactly the kind of grinding, multi-set affair that already cost Eala once before? It's worth noting, too, that grass behaves differently than the hard courts of Cary. Lower bounces and faster surface speed generally favor the more aggressive first-strike player. That alone could be the single biggest variable separating this match from their first meeting. Eala isn't just a different player than she was in 2024. She's playing on a surface that, in theory, suits her evolved game far better than the conditions in North Carolina did. There's also a second-round storyline waiting in the wings that raises the stakes even further. Whoever wins this first-round clash will face either Serena Williams, the 23-time Grand Slam champion who came out of retirement on a wild card for her first major appearance back, or Maya Joint of Australia, the player that denied Eala her first WTA Tour title in the final of last year's Eastbourne Open. Either outcome would be a defining moment in Eala's young career. A potential clash with Williams would be the kind of match that transcends the sport itself, drawing eyes that don't normally watch tennis at all. A rematch with Joint would carry its own weight, a chance to settle a different kind of unfinished business from a final that got away. But none of it happens unless she gets past Zarazua first.
Eala's own Wimbledon history adds one more layer of pressure here. Last year, in her senior main draw debut, she lost in the first round to eventual champion Barbora Krejcikova in 3 hard-fought sets. She's been here before, on this exact stage, and walked away early. This year, with a seed next to her name for the first time, the expectations are different, and so is the responsibility she carries, not just for herself, but for a country watching her every move. In the Philippines, where tennis has historically lived in the shadow of basketball and boxing, Eala's run has become something closer to a national event. Local broadcasters, sports pages, and social media have all shifted attention toward a sport that rarely gets this kind of spotlight, and that visibility only grows with every round she survives. What makes this particular rivalry compelling isn't drama for the sake of drama. It's the genuine uncertainty of it. These aren't two strangers guessing at each other's tendencies. They're two players who've trained alongside each other, competed against each other, and know exactly where the other's strengths and vulnerabilities lie. That kind of familiarity can cut either way. It can lead to a tactical chess match where both players neutralize each other's preferred patterns, or it can lead to exactly the kind of unpredictable swings that defined their first meeting in Cary. It's also worth remembering that first-round matches at Grand Slams are rarely simple, even when the ranking gap looks decisive on paper. Nerves, occasion, and unfamiliar surface conditions can flatten out the difference between a number 30 and a number 76 far more than people expect. Add in the emotional subtext of a rivalry that already has one chapter written, and this becomes a match where form and ranking alone won't tell you the outcome.
The match hasn't been played yet. The result isn't written, but everything both players have built over the past 2 years, every training session, every ranking jump, every near miss, funnels into one single afternoon at the All England Club. Will Eala finally settle the score from Cary, or does Zarazua prove that 2024 result wasn't a one-off? Drop your prediction in the comments below. I want to know who you think comes out on top and why. If you want the full breakdown once the match wraps, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on, because this story is far from over.